tofu by throwing my steak out a window. Last night, my wife's boss from her brand new job invited us over for dinner. On the drive over, my wife reiterated many times to me just how important it was to make a good impression. I scoffed and arrogantly informed my silly wife that I always made good impressions. My wife's boss is a single lady in her 50s, so it was just the three of us. We chit-chat over drinks and salads and seemed to really be hitting it off. She laughed at my well-timed, perfectly appropriate jokes, and my wife seemed pleased. Soon she brought out the main course, a nice, big, juicy steak for each of us. As I began to cut into my steak, I was discouraged to discover how undercooked this steak was. Now, I've had my fair share of rare steak. I prefer medium, but I can handle rare. This was several minutes on a hot grill short of rare. I probably could have resuscitated the cow had I tried. Instead, I sat there, fidgeting with my knife and fork, worrying about how I was going to get away with not eating the steak. Claim veganism? No, I'd already feigned great enthusiasm upon seeing the steak. Just then, our hostess excused herself to the kitchen to take care of some dessert preparations. As I looked across the fancy dining room table at the open window of this 3-story apartment, a cartoon light bulb appeared over my head. I knew I had to be decisive, realizing that she could return at any moment. I committed. I grabbed the steak with my hand, gently shook off the juice, and executed a perfect throw right through the center of the open window. Here's the big time, foo. The window wasn't open. It was the cleanest fricking window you've ever seen in your life. That is, until my mostly raw slab of steak slammed up against it and slowly slid down, leaving a trail of bloody juice in its wake. My wife, whose steak was a nice medium rare and was unaware of my predicament, turned, jaw dropped, and stared at me like I was an alien from another planet. This look then slowly morphed into more of a "there is no place on this planet you can ever hide from me" expression of demonic anger. My wife's boss heard the thud of the steak on window impact and came quickly. She took in the scene: the steak sitting on the windowsill, the blood trail, my empty plate, and then gave me an inquisitive, puzzled look. I just didn't know what to say. It felt like a minute of silence, but it was probably 3 or 4 seconds. Finally, the best I could manage was, "I'm so sorry. I am such a klutz. I don't know. I was just cutting it, and it slipped. Just ask my wife. I really am a klutz, right, honey? No help coming from that direction. I will clean this up. I can't believe this. I am so sorry." Both women continued to stare at me like I had escaped from the loony bin as I smeared the blood around the window with my cloth napkin, dusted off the steak, and continued to mutter my incoherent explanation. I knew no one was buying the story. I knew what I had to do. I sheepishly returned to my seat and proceeded to eat every bite of that disgusting, cold, chewy, bloody, raw steak. I remained pretty quiet the rest of the evening. My wife's only 2 words to me since the incident are "I'm fine." TLDR, I tried to sneakily throw my undercooked steak through an open window, only to find out it wasn't open. Edit, thanks, kind Redditors. Update, just got the first post "I'm fine" communication from my wife, via text, who is at work. Good news, boss name, and I just had a good laugh over how much of a ducking idiot you are. I hope you know you will never live this down. I love you, moron. Tofu by stuffing my face with edibles before dinner with my wife's parents. Recently, I traveled to Denver, Colorado, with my wife and my wife's parents. As a resident of a non-legalized state and as someone who is too much of a pussycat to regularly buy illegal drugs, the thing I was looking forward to most was the chance to buy fancy legal weed. What could possibly go wrong? So, the first thing I do upon arriving, and after successfully ditching the in-laws, is drag my wife to a nearby dispensary for a shopping spree. And, oh my god, it was just like in my dreams. Tons of different options in neat little sample jars, and a team of helpful stoners walking me through the various strains. Are you looking for a mellow body? Or do you want something that gives you a bit more pep and energy? Or are you just hoping for something light to take the stress off? Yes, yes, and yes. I reply eagerly, like a fat kid in a candy store, and request an eighth ounce of about 7 different options. In hindsight, if I learned anything from this experience, it is that my math and science teachers never taught me basic information, like what is an ounce, or how much weed can a person consume in a single weekend. Sure, I can tell you when 2 speeding trains leaving separate stations will collide or recite Avogadro's number, but it turns out that none of that information is particularly relevant to getting high in a responsible and efficient manner. And it was at this dispensary that I also learned that you can't actually smoke in public places, including the hotel that my wife and I were staying at. As a result, before leaving, I begged my wife to buy some edibles that I could munch on until we found a place to properly get lit. After expressing shock as to the absurd volume of drugs that we were buying, unlike me, she is the product of private school and understands the imperial measurement system, she relents, and we walk out of the store with what felt like a dump truck of weed plus a small package of seemingly innocent gingersnap cookies. When we finally got back to the hotel room, I tore those bad boys open, only to find about a dozen tiny cookies roughly the size of a quarter. What the duck, Denver? Seeing the skepticism and hunger in my eyes, my wife warns me that I should go easy and look at the back of the package first before trying one. Dose size, 1/2 cookie, I read silently as I started taking microbites from the edges, like a giant chinchilla gnawing on a sunflower seed. But what kind of savage only eats half a cookie? So, a second later, I covertly popped the remainder into my mouth. And then I quickly stuff another 2 cookies in my mouth for good measure the moment my wife turns her back. We may not have legal weed back home, but I routinely devour an entire package of Milanos in one sitting without breaking a sweat. Your move, tiny ginger snaps. About 30 minutes later, we are in the back seat of her parents' rental car on the way to dinner. And that's when things start to turn around. My stomach growls. Loudly and angrily. My wife looks at me with inquisitive eyes that seem to say, diarrhea? But I merely clutch my tummy and mumble something about altitude sickness. You didn't eat a whole cookie, did you? She asks, 10% with genuine concern and 90% with seething irritation. Of course not. I respond, avoiding eye contact for the remainder of the car ride. A few minutes later, we are climbing out of her parents' rental car and heading into some trendy farm-to-table restaurant. I don't remember how I made it to my seat, and I don't remember even looking at the menu, but I do remember the concerned look on the waiter's face as he asked me if I was doing all right. Keep it together, man, I say to myself. But my wife's sudden groan suggests that I may have also said that to the waiter. Things are going downhill fast. The waiter nods sympathetically, takes our orders, and then heads to the next table. The moment he walks away, my wife starts staring daggers at me. I start to worry that the jig is up. You are sweating from your entire face, she says with both pity and disgust. Not quite knowing what to do, I reach for my napkin and proceed to blot my cheeks, nose, neck, chin, and forehead. At this point, my wife's mom looks over at me with some concern. Are you all right? She asks kindly. Yeah, the food's just a bit spicy, I reply, far too quick to realize that we had literally just ordered and that there is nothing on the table except for a basket of dinner rolls. My wife kicks me under the table to grab my attention. Bathroom. Now, she hisses. Get it together. I reluctantly got up from the table and headed for the toilet. After splashing several handfuls of water on my face, I approach a urinal and start to pee. Now, one of the more disconcerting effects of those tiny gingersnap monsters is the feeling that time has become untethered from reality. As I am peeing, I start to get the very unsettling feeling that I have been taking a piss for the better part of an hour and that my wife must be pacing around the restaurant worried about me. But deep down, I know that is absurd. I've been peeing all my life, sometimes multiple times a day. I've probably taken more than 50,000 leaks, and it usually only takes about a minute at most. So, given that my typical pee is no more than 60 seconds, and given that it feels like I am about halfway done, that means that I've probably only been standing here for about 30 seconds, right? But the guy at the urinal next to me doesn't respond and instead starts shuffling away from me midstream, like a startled penguin. I tried, albeit unsuccessfully, to break eye contact. After finally finishing, I again splashed some water on my face and returned to my seat, making sure to apologize to the table for being gone such a long time just in case my math was off. Next, I try briefly to engage in small talk with my wife's father, but I am far too high to understand what either of us are saying. Not wanting to start laughing uncontrollably at the wrong moment or, really, at any moment, I figure the safest idea is to nod my head periodically and drink a ton of water. Nothing cures mental fatigue like water, right? To my wife's horror, I stood up, grabbed my water glass, and thrust it out to the waiter, who unfortunately was on the opposite side of the restaurant. But he turns out to be really cool and, after making his way over to our table, tells me that he'll do his best to keep me stocked with ice water for the rest of the meal. He also helpfully suggests that if the dinner rolls aren't too spicy for me, I should probably eat one or two so that I'm not sitting there on an empty stomach. Smart man. However, after going through all of the bread on the table and 3 glasses of water, I started to get worried that I needed actual food to offset the growing paranoia from those tiny ginger snap devils. Do you think I should flag down the waiter again and ask what's taking so long? I suggested helpfully to my wife. What? We literally just ordered 3 ducking minutes ago. And at that exchange, my wife loses her cool. How many cookies did you eat? She demands. Whoa, easy there, Torquemada, I respond, somewhat horrified at her outburst. I had a few cookies, but keep it down. I don't want your parents to know how ducked up I am right now. Really? They are sitting 2 feet away from you. They know. I looked up and, for the first time, and noticed both of my in-laws just staring at me for what literally felt like an eternity. I ate way too many edibles on a trip and wigged out during a dinner with my wife and her parents. Edit, wow. Thanks to everyone for all the love, and even some of the hate. I think I have officially peaked in life. As for part 2 of the story, there's a reason or, technically, 3 delicious reasons why it was cut short. At that point, my wife's singular focus was on getting me out of the restaurant before I either puked all over the table or pissed myself, or an unsightly combination of both. So, after a few spastic, 2-handed waves of goodbye to my in-laws, she rushed me to the door like a Secret Service agent evacuating the president. My night after that was a whirlwind of barfing and groveling, mixed with a few vain attempts at getting handsy back in the hotel room. But being the absolute awesome sweetie that she is, my wife stuck with me through the whole nightmare, whispering over and over in my ear, "Please don't die, we have a mortgage." Have you ever picked up a hitchhiker? Just about every time I see someone, I stop. I kind of got out of the habit in the last couple of years, moved to a big city, and all that, but my girlfriend wasn't too stoked on the practice. Then some sh*t happened to me that changed me, and I am back to offering rides habitually. If you would indulge me, it is a long story and has almost nothing to do with hitchhiking other than happening on a road. This past year, I have had 3 instances of car trouble. A blowout on a freeway, a bunch of blown fuses, and an out-of-gas situation, all of them were while driving other people's cars, which, for some reason, makes it worse on an emotional level. It makes it worse on a practical level as well, what with the fact that I carry things like a jack and extra fuses in my car and know enough not to park facing downhill on a steep incline with less than a gallon of fuel. Anyway, each of these times this sh*t happened, I was disgusted with how people would not bother to help me. I spent hours on the side of the freeway waiting, watching roadside assistance vehicles blow past me, for AAA to show up. The 4 gas stations I asked for a gas can told me that they couldn't loan them out for my safety, but I could buy a really sh*tty 1-gallon one with no cap for $15. It was enough, each time, to make you say sh*t like this country is going to hell in a handbasket. But you know who came to my rescue all 3 times? Immigrants. Mexican immigrants. None of them spoke a lick of the language. But one of those dudes had a profound effect on me. He was the guy who stopped to help me with a blowout with his whole family of 6 in tow. I was on the side of the road for close to 4 hours. Big Jeep, blown rear tire, had a spare but no jack. I had signs in the windows of the car, big signs that said I needed Jack and offered money. No dice. Right as I am about to give up and just hitch out there, a van pulls over and dude bounds out. He sizes the situation up and calls for his youngest daughter, who speaks English. He conveys through her that he has a jack, but it is too small for the Jeep, so we will need to brace it. He produces a saw from the van and cuts a log out of a downed tree on the side of the road. We rolled it over, put his jack on top, and bam, business. I started taking the wheel off, and, if you can believe it, I broke his tire iron. It was one of those collapsible ones, and I wasn't careful, so I snapped the head I needed cleaned off. Duck. No worries, he runs to the van, gives it to his wife, and she is gone in a flash, down the road to buy a tire iron. She is back in 15 minutes, we finished the job with a little sweat and cussing, stupid log was starting to give, and I am a very happy man. We are both filthy and sweaty. The wife produces a large water jug for us to wash our hands in. I tried to put a 20 in the man's hand, but he wouldn't take it, so I instead gave it to his wife as quietly as I could. I thanked them up one side and down the other. I asked the little girl where they lived, thinking maybe I could send them a gift for being so awesome. She says they live in Mexico. They are here so mommy and daddy can pick peaches for the next few weeks. After that, they are going to pick cherries, then go back home. She asks if I have had lunch, and when I told her no, she gave me a tamale from their cooler, the best ducking tamale I have ever had. So, to clarify, a family that is undoubtedly poorer than you, me, and just about everyone else on that stretch of road, working on a seasonal basis where time is money, took an hour or two out of their day to help some strange dude on the side of the road when people in tow trucks were just passing me by. Wow. But we aren't done yet. I thank them again and walk back to my car and open the foil on the tamale because I am starving at this point. What do I find inside? My ducking $20 bill. I whirl around and run up to the van, and the guy rolls his window down. He sees the $20 in my hand and just shakes his head, like he won't take it. All I can think to say is poor favor, poor favor, poor favor with my hands out. Dude just smiles, shakes his head, and, with what looked like great concentration, tries his hardest to speak to me in English. Today you, tomorrow me. He rolled up his window and drove away, his daughter waving to me in the rear view. I sat in my car eating the best ducking tamale of all time, and I just cried. Like a little girl. It has been a rough year, and nothing has broken my way. This was so out of left field, I just couldn't deal. In the 5 months since, I have changed a couple of tires, given a few rides to gas stations, and, once, went 50 miles out of my way to get a girl to an airport. I won't accept money. Every time I tell them the same thing when we are through, today you, tomorrow me. TLDR, long rambling story about how the kindness of strangers, particularly folks from south of the border, forced me to be more helpful on the road and in life in general. I am sure it won't be as meaningful to anyone else, but it was seriously the highlight of 2010. Any hot relatives? Wow, okay, I wasn't sure if I was ever going to tell anyone about this, but it's late and I'm sleep deprived, so I guess I'll just write it now and regret it in the morning. First of all, just for some background, my mom died right when I was born. She was actually really, really hot, but this isn't about her. I guess that's ducked up to say, but whatever. I actually grew up with my dad's family because my dad has all sorts of emotional issues, and he died before I was born. So, as you can see, my childhood was really kind of messed up. Anyway, growing up, I felt like there was always a lot of distance between me and my sister. When I was about 17 or 18, I first noticed that my sister was a hottie. I don't want to go into too many details about it, but basically what happened is that I accidentally found a video that she made of herself. I knew she didn't make it for me, but I thought she was so ducking beautiful that I watched it twice. I probably would have watched it a hell of a lot more, except that, right around the time I found the video, all this crazy sh*t went down, and I had to leave home. My dad's family, who I was staying with, got into bad trouble with the law. I never talk about it. So, I was totally lusting after my sister at that point. She was also having bad trouble with the law. She was actually in custody when I left home. My friend and I went to pick her up. When I saw her that day, after seeing the video, I have to be honest, I just wanted to duck her brains out. Looking back on it now, it's pretty messed up, but I think she had feelings for me too. She actually kissed me right after we came to get her, and it wasn't a sisterly kiss, you know? I mean, it wasn't ridiculously sexual or anything, but it definitely wasn't sisterly. After we left, we all went to crash with my sister's friends. On the trip there, my friend sort of implied that he wanted to get with my sister, and I got a little jealous. He's a good-looking guy, and even though she was my sister, I just felt like he was competition. Not much else happened between us for a while except some maybe sexy hugging. Pretty much everyone in my life at that point was wanted by the government, so we all moved around a lot. I'm not saying that I'm proud of it or anything, but it was kind of an awesome time. My friend and my sister never hooked up, I don't think, but I thought there was some serious sexual tension going on between them. It was around that time that I got really badly hurt in an accident. It was messed up. I almost died. But when I was in recovery, my sister came to see me, and out of the clear blue sky, she started giving me this awesome, slow, passionate kiss on the lips. Sadly, although, I guess for the best, nothing ever came of it. We spent some time apart, and I started to get really religious, so I tried not to think of her that way. It was actually going well for a long time, like, I was totally over her. But I have to say, like a year or so after all that stuff went down, we were out sailing, not like a date or anything romantic like that, and she was wearing like the hottest bikini I've ever ducking seen, and it brought back all the old feelings. Sigh. A little while later, she actually wound up with my friend from before, the sexual tension guy. I can't say I was surprised. But even after she was shacking up with my friend, there was one time we were at a party. My friend was inside, and my sister and I were outside alone. It was a really intimate moment. I think something might have happened, except that I killed the mood when I told her that Darth Vader was our father and that I had to go face him. Who's the dumbest person you've ever met? It's not uncommon for a teacher to have students who are a bit behind the curve in certain aspects, but 99.99999% of the time they are keen on something. They might not understand how to identify a noun or what the theme is, but they somehow know how to make a mean plate of nachos. You learn pretty quickly not to judge fish for their tree climbing ability, you know? I thought this was the rule when I was teaching until I met Kevin. Kevin isn't his real name, but it doesn't matter because he can't spell it anyway. Kevin was a student of mine during my last year of teaching. He came to my classroom with very little to show for his academic past. He had moved a few times and thus was missing a lot of typical test scores that we used to try and ballpark their ability. Don't worry, it was a ballpark. We didn't make major decisions until we could talk and work with a student for a bit. I thought, that's fine. I'll just do some one-on-one with Kevin and see what's up. One-on-one with Kevin was like conversing with someone who'd forgotten everything in a freak, if not impossible, amnesia incident. There was no evidence that he had learned anything past the second grade, and now he was in the 9th grade. Flabbergasted, I figured we needed to get more serious with this. If he was going to be in my class, I needed to know why and how. I decided to meet with him, his guidance counselor, his parents, and another teacher to see what was really going on. This is where it all became clear. It was by some incredible fluke that his family hadn't been wiped off the face of the earth years ago. Odds are that his entire heritage was based on blind luck and some type of sick divine intervention that saves his family every time a threat presents itself. Kevin was the genetic pinnacle of this null achievement. Even my instructional lead, a woman who could find a redeeming trait in a Balrog, failed to see any reason this kid or his family should be alive today. So, here's a list of events that made it abundantly clear that God exists, and he's laughing uncontrollably. Kevin frequently forgot when or where class was. On more than one occasion, I had to retrieve him from other classrooms. Kevin ate an entire pack of crayons, puked, and then did it again the next day. This is 9th grade. I have no idea where he got the crayons. Kevin's dad wrote tuition checks and mailed them to me, his English teacher. This was a public school. When I gave it back to Kevin, voided, to give to his dad with a brief note explaining that this is a public school, Kevin got in trouble for trying to spend it at 711 after school. Kevin was removed from the culinary arts program after leaving a cutting board on the gas stove and starting a fire twice. Kevin threw his lunch at the school resource officer and tried to run away. He ran into a door and insisted it wasn't him. Kevin stole my phone during class. I called it, it rang. He denied that it was ringing. Not that it wasn't his, not that he didn't know, he denied that the phone was actually ringing. He tried it 3 times before the end of the year. Kevin called the basketball coach a mother-ducking bitch during the gym. Basketball tryouts were that afternoon. Kevin tried out. It didn't go well. Kevin's mom could never remember which school he went to. She missed several meetings because she drove to other schools, none of which he ever went to. Kevin tassed himself in the neck before a football game. Kevin kept a bottle of orange Kool-Aid in his backpack for about 4 months. He thought it would turn into alcohol. He drank it in homeroom and threw up. Kevin says the N-word a lot. Kevin was white. The high school was 84% black. Kevin got beat up a lot. Kevin stole another student's iPhone and tried to sell it back to them. Kevin didn't understand that his grade was dependent on tests, quizzes, homework, classwork, and participation. Kevin finished his first semester with a 3% average. He tried to bribe me with $11. Kevin spit on a girl and said you should get out of those wet clothes. The girl was the Spanish student teacher. Kevin didn't know dogs and cats were different animals. Kevin tried to download porn onto a computer in the library, at the circulation desk, while he was logged on. Kevin asked the girl to prom, he was in 9th grade, and freshmen don't go to prom, by asking for her phone number and then texting her his address. Kevin got gum in his hair constantly. Kevin regularly tried to cheat on assignments by knocking the pile over, grabbing one before I had picked them all up, and then writing its name on it wherever there was room. Kevin had several allergies, but neither his parents nor he could remember what they were. They were very concerned that the holiday party, it's high school, we don't have those, would have peanuts. When they finally got a doctor's note, he was allergic to amoxicillin. Kevin and his parents took a trip to Nassau, how the duck did they even get airline tickets, and forgot all their luggage at home. I didn't believe him when he told me until I talked to his mom, who told me the first thing when I saw her at the bi-weekly meeting. Kevin's grandfather apparently died in a chainsaw accident. I can only assume God was looking the other way that day.